February 9, 1969. A plane that cost $1 billion to develop, the equivalent of $8 billion today, took off for the first time in every Washington, and the world of aviation was never the same. The Boeing 747 was absurdly large, 2.5 times the size of the largest commercial aircraft of the era, capable of carrying nearly 500 people in a single flight. It seemed like the greatest triumph of American engineering of the century, but there is something about this plane that no one can explain at first glance. A hump, a massive protrusion at the top of the fuselage, just behind the nose. For decades, passengers boarded this plane, felt that strange curve up above, landed in 150 different countries, and never knew what it was really there for. You think you know the answer. You don't. The Boeing 747 is not just a plane. It is the plane that democratized global air travel. Before it, flying was a luxury for executives and diplomats. A transatlantic ticket cost the equivalent of 3 monthly wages for an American worker. After the 747, it became middle-class routine. More than 1,500 units were manufactured over 55 years of continuous production. At its peak, during the 80s and 90s, the 747 carried more than 3.5 million passengers per month in the United States alone, the equivalent of the entire population of Los Angeles boarding every month. It was so dominant that airlines had no choice, either buy the jumbo or watch competitors cut the cost per seat from 32 cents to 18 cents per mile while they bled money. The problem is that a plane this size creates challenges that normal aircraft never face, and the solution to the greatest of those challenges lies in exactly that hump that no one can explain. Today, we're going to analyze the Boeing 747 and the secret of its hump. We're going to look at the internal engineering logic that produced the solution, a decision that seemed strange in 1966 and proved to be brilliant over 5 decades. We're going to understand the strategic vulnerability that motivated this choice, the real, documented fear that the 747 would become scrap metal before completing 10 years of operation. And we're going to examine Boeing's bet on a completely unpredictable market, and why that bet redefined commercial aviation forever. Here's what really happened. In 1966, Juan Trippe, the legendary founder of Pan Am, gave a personal ultimatum to Bill Allen, Boeing CDO. I want a plane 2.5 times larger than the 707, and I want it to work as a cargo plane too. Trippe knew the future was volume, more passengers per flight, lower cost per seat, higher margin per route. Boeing accepted, but the project concealed a problem no one had anticipated. To be an efficient cargo plane, the 747 needed a front cargo door at the nose of the aircraft, the same position where the cockpit would sit in a conventional design. On a pure cargo plane, you can open the entire nose like a mouth, swinging it upward. On a passenger plane, the cockpit sits exactly there. It was an engineering deadlock with 3 possible solutions. Place the flight deck in the middle of the fuselage, creating serious visibility problems, position it at the tail, something never done safely at commercial scale, or raise the cockpit above the main body of the plane, creating a second deck. Boeing chose the third option. The hump was born this way. The flight deck was lifted 5 meters above the main floor level, creating a second deck 5.8 meters long in the original version. The nose was left completely free to open. This mechanism allowed a standard ISO container to be loaded in under 6 minutes, a logistical feat no passenger aircraft had achieved before. The full conversion from passenger to cargo configuration took less than 72 hours. It was like turning an opera house into an industrial warehouse over a weekend. In 1967, a year before the public launch of the 747, Boeing was staring at a nightmare scenario. The American government was funding the development of the Boeing 2707, a commercial supersonic capable of crossing the Atlantic in 2 hours and 50 minutes. The European Concorde was in advanced testing. Boeing's own internal reports projected that supersonic jets would dominate long-haul routes by 1985 at the latest. The 747, with its conventional speed of Mach 0.85, would be too slow to compete on those routes. There was a real, not theoretical, discussed in board meetings with dates and numbers, where the jumbo would become scrap metal within 10 years of operation. Pan Am and Boeing both knew this when they signed the contract, but this time the stakes were higher than any bet commercial aviation had ever made. Boeing didn't wait for the market to decide. It designed the 747 to transform, and the hump was the axis of that transformability. In later versions, the upper deck was extended systematically, from 5.8 meters in the original version to 7.6 meters in the 747-300, launched in 1983, and then to 10.2 meters in the 747-400, the best-selling version of the entire family, with 694 units delivered. Each additional meter of hump represented 16 more business class seats, the difference between a transatlantic route in the black or in the red. The detail almost no one knows. In the 70s, the Hump had no seats. It had bars. Pan Am, TWA, and Lufthansa used the upper deck as a VIP lounge. A piano on some flights, cocktail service, leather sofas, panoramic windows. It was a symbol of luxury that fit literally inside a plane. When the 1973 oil crisis tripled the price of aviation fuel from 12 cents per gallon to 36 cents in less than 6 months, those bars became premium seats overnight. The vulnerability of the bet was precisely this. The 747 burned 12,000 liters of fuel per hour of flight. With cheap kerosene, it was the most efficient machine in the sky. With expensive kerosene, the entire equation flipped. The supersonics never dominated. The Concorde never exceeded 14 aircraft in operation, and the Boeing 7207 was canceled in 1971. But the 747's true rival came from within the industry itself. The Boeing 777, launched in 1995, carried up to 396 passengers with just 2 engines. 2 engines versus 4, the operational savings reached $4,000 less per hour of flight. Then came the 787 Dreamliner and the Airbus A350, twin-engine wide-body aircraft with fuel efficiency 25% better than the 747-400. The economic logic shifted irreversibly. 2 smaller aircraft, each with 2 engines on the same route, generate more profit than a partially full 4-engine jumbo. The Hump, born as an engineering solution, became the symbol of an era the market itself was closing. The 747's Hump is the most elegant engineering decision in the history of commercial aviation, and most people go their entire lives without knowing it. It doesn't exist by aesthetic accident. It exists because Boeing bet everything on a plane that needed to be 2 things at once: the world's largest passenger transport and the most adaptable freighter on the market. That bet worked for 5 decades. The 747 ended commercial production in 2022, but still operates as a freighter at more than 30 airlines today. The Hump keeps flying. The jumbo era isn't over. It just changed its function. If you want to understand the real money that drives commercial aviation, subscribe for more analysis. Until next time.